Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're tackling a big question in the world of climate action. What exactly is a carbon credit? And maybe more importantly, how on earth can we trust that it represents a real impact? We're going to pull back the curtain on the rule book that governs this entire market. Okay, so let's start with the basic challenge, right? We all know we need to pour money into climate solutions, and carbon credits are a huge part of that. But here's the tricky part. They represent something completely invisible, a promise of 1 ton of CO2 that wasn't released into the atmosphere.
And that really is the million-dollar question, isn't it? If you buy a carbon credit, how do you know, really know that it's legit, that a real emission reduction happened that wouldn't have happened otherwise? It all boils down to one simple word: trust.
And that's exactly where Verra comes into the picture. Now, it's important to note, they don't develop climate projects themselves. Think of them more like the architects, the ones who created the global rulebook specifically to solve this problem of trust. It's called the Verified Carbon Standard.
You can think of the VCS program as the master instruction manual. It's the whole framework, laying out all the nitty-gritty rules and hoops a project has to jump through to make sure every single carbon credit that gets created is the real deal, that it's backed by a process that is rigorous, transparent, and totally credible. So what's the end game here? Well, the program's goals are all about building a solid, confident market. First, they want to create a trusted credit, the VCU, that's basically interchangeable, like a currency. Then, back it up with a super secure registry so no one can count the same credit twice. And of course, the big ones, making sure the credits are real, additional, and permanent, all while sparking new ideas for fighting climate change. So, how does an idea, like reforesting a huge patch of land or setting up a new wind farm, actually transform into one of these trusted credits? Let's walk through that journey from the ground up. It's not a quick process, let me tell you. It's a whole life cycle with checks and balances at every single step. So first, the project developer designs their plan. Then, a totally independent auditor comes in to validate that the plan actually meets all the VCS rules. After that, the project gets going, and the developer has to constantly monitor and report their progress. Then the auditor comes back to verify those results. And only after all of that, only then, will Verra issue the final credits, the verified carbon units. But this whole thing is so much more than just a checklist. It's really built on a foundation of core principles. Every single project, no exceptions, has to live and breathe these principles to even be considered high quality. First up, the credit has to be real. And I mean really real. This can't be just a theory or a good idea on paper. The project has to show concrete, measurable proof that the climate benefit actually happened. Next, and this one is absolutely critical, the credit has to be additional. What does that mean? It means the climate benefit would not have happened if the project didn't exist. You have to prove that this goes above and beyond what would have been business as usual. And the impact has to stick around. It has to be permanent. Think about a forestry project. What happens if there's a wildfire? Well, the system actually has built-in safeguards, like buffer pools of credits, to ensure against those kinds of risks. It's all about making sure that captured carbon stays captured. And here's the kicker. You can't just take the project's word for any of this. The entire process, from start to finish, must be independently audited by an accredited expert who has no skin in the game. Which brings us to the different players in this whole ecosystem. Yeah, creating a credit you can trust is definitely not a solo act. It takes a whole team, an entire ecosystem of independent players where each one has a very specific and separate job to do. It's all about keeping the system honest. And what's so smart about this is the clear separation of powers. You've got the project proponent, they're the doer, the ones on the ground making the project happen. Then you have the auditor, they are the referee, making sure the doer is playing by the rules. And finally, you have Verra, the rulemaker, who manages the whole system and is the only one who can actually issue the credits in the end. Okay, so we've got a tough process, we've got core principles, and we've got independent players. But there's one more huge piece of the puzzle. How do you make sure that a credit for 1 ton of CO2 isn't sold to 2 different people? How do you stop double counting? That is where the Verra Registry comes in. It's the final lock on the system. Think of it like a central bank's ledger, but for carbon credits. It's a public database that gives every single VCU a unique serial number. It tracks it from the moment it's born to the moment it's used up or retired. This makes it pretty much impossible for the same climate benefit to be claimed twice.
And after all that, the intense process, the audits, the principles, the registry, what do you get? You get one single standardized and trusted unit. One verified carbon unit. And that one VCU represents 1 metric ton of carbon dioxide equivalent that has been verifiably kept out of our atmosphere.
So you see, this entire structure, this whole ecosystem, is designed to build that one crucial ingredient, trust. It's all about making sure that money flows to climate solutions that actually truly work. But it does leave us with a pretty big question. As the climate crisis gets more intense, the pressure on systems like this is only going to grow. The real challenge isn't just about whether the rules are good today, but whether they can adapt and evolve fast enough for tomorrow.